Okay, well, welcome to CSUN ATC TV. We're back for our next afternoon session. The theme of our session kind of follows nicely with a morning session that we had with Terrell. See, I caught you, right? Terrell and Jared Smith. The title of our discussion this afternoon is Future of Web Accessibility Based on Predictors. So we've got Jared from WebAIM, Rob Carr from WebAIM, and Terrell from the University of Washington. Welcome, guys. So we've been kind of talking about this topic. Can you kind of set the stage for those, especially for the folks that weren't here this morning, for the research and the study on the predictors, and then we can get into the conversation.
Be happy to do that. Again, Terrell Thompson with the University of Washington, and the study that we reported on this morning, which is in the CSUN Journal of the current issue, in part was looking at revisiting a study that we did in 2012. So it's 10 years apart. How have things changed over the last 10 years? And one of the variables was web accessibility. But we were also looking at other things like policy and higher education. And we were specifically looking at higher education web accessibility. So in 2012, it was a pretty simple study, and we had 5 measures of web accessibility. So not at all comprehensive, but just things that we could very easily script and do ourselves. And so the 5 variables were document language, headings, page regions, alt text, and form labels. And then we, 10 years later, revisited that, collected the same data, and we collected a lot more data because we had WebAIM as partners and we used the Wave API. But we looked back at those 5 variables specifically to see if they had changed over time. And what we found is that, for those of you who weren't here this morning, with document language in 2012, 37.1% of pages in the population, this is all higher education institutions, the top 10 web pages at each institution, according to Google. 37% had document language identified. That's now up to 98.9% in the new study. So almost 100% of pages have that feature. Headings, 77.9% in 2012. That now is up to 98.3%. So that also is close to 100%. And that's just, do they have headings at all? Not looking at, whether headings are in the proper order. Page regions, in 2012, ARIA was barely a thing. And so not surprisingly, there were only a few institutions that were kind of on the cutting edge. 2.9% of web pages had ARIA landmark regions. In 2022, we also included HTML5 semantic elements, and that is up to 93.4%. So again, almost, very high, almost 100% on those 3 variables. Alt text was 61.5% in 2012. That's up to 87.1%. So there we started to fall a little bit short. Still a lot of improvement, but not 100%. And form labels was 40.7% in 2012. That had improved, but not as much as the other variables, 67.8% today. And so just thinking about those 5 variables, 3 that are very nearly 100%, probably most likely built into themes and templates and content management systems, and so that happens automatically. Whereas alt text and form labels, people have to make a conscious effort, and we're not quite there yet, on things where people have to make a conscious effort.
Yeah, excellent, very good, thank you. So, Jared and Rob, WebAIM's role in this was what?
So we helped to collect the automated test data across the sites. For the second test, we aligned some of those tests to what happened in 2012 so we could compare changes over time. Then we collected a whole lot more accessibility data and provided some scoring of those websites to allow some comparisons between the sites, but also comparison of those higher education sites to web pages generally. We align that data to our WebAIM million analysis and annual analysis of the top 1 million home pages. So we can get a sense of to how those pages scored, how they looked.
Right.
And Terrell indicated those notable improvements in those few aspects of accessibility. There was a lot of improvement, but also when we compare 2022 to home pages generally, they fared much better than the average home page, quite a bit better, about 20 errors on average, which it's still 20 errors for on an average home page in higher ed is notable, but that's a lot less than the 50 or so average that we find when we test home pages generally.
So just, again, to establish some context here for our audience, a couple of things. So first of all, this is all higher ed sites that we're looking at. So these are not sites of the public or any businesses or anything like that. This is strictly higher ed in terms of a domain, so to speak, that you're looking at. And this specific research is separate and different from the WebAIM screen reader survey and the Millions survey, right? So another thing, just to kind of establish a little bit of baseline about what we're talking about, what this research really helped to identify. So Rob, you've obviously had some time to look at this thing. I saw this morning in this morning's sessions, and other than the clear areas of improvement, there was nothing there on those pages that, on your research that surprised me in terms of the findings. And I asked myself, was that because you did scope a little bit? There's limitations to how the algorithms were written against what you were looking for. But how about you? I mean, Rob, did you see anything that jumped out at you that you said, oh, this is other than the increase where there was clear improvement? Was there anything there that you really saw? This surprises me. I thought this. Or I think everybody else in the industry thinks that.
Well, see, you took out the part that did surprise me. You precluded that as being an answer, pardon me, because I do think that the rate of increase that we saw, frankly, was surprising, because when you look at the year-over-year WebAIM million data, I think there was reason to be surprised by those bigger gains. And I think that speaks to the fact that higher ed, particularly public higher ed institutions, have been I think looking at this issue more broadly. I think they're a little more mature than some of the groups that we encounter and test for day to day. But I think for me that was one of the surprising findings, just those big increases, pushing almost 100% on some of these things. Yeah, and you say over 10 years, that's a decent amount of time, but everybody in this room and everybody who's watching online knows in accessibility land, that's probably not that long. That's the kind of thing that shows the progress that we would expect. We'd like for it to be quicker, but it's an encouraging set of data points.
And again, just I meant to say this earlier. In terms of scope, we're talking home pages here, right? We're not talking drilling down into an entire web domain or a website, where we're just talking about what you're scraping, off the home page.
It was actually, for our study, it was the top 10 pages.
Top 10 pages.
It's a little bit more than the home page, and this is according to Google, so we use the Google Search API to collect whatever Google thinks are the top 10 pages for each institution.
Yeah.
But it tends to be high level, home page, academics, libraries, pages that rise to the top that do get a lot of attention, a lot of focus, and so it's not unexpected that those would be those are most likely more accessible than if you get further out into the trenches. Even in higher education, you're going to have less positive results. That's my experience at the University of Washington. We've got great centralized support for accessibility, but it's a huge siloed institution, and a lot of inaccessibility is still out there.
Yeah. Jared,
With the WebAIM million, we do look just at the home page, but when we do test deeper into sites, we find that the homepage is fairly representative of the
everything
accessibility deeper within the site. A little different. Web pages tend to be a little heavier and bigger. Yeah. But the accessibility of a homepage generally is a pretty good indicator of the accessibility when you go deeper within that site.
Okay. Well, that is a little surprising to me. I mean, again, without giving away, I know you're working on, going to release the new study next week, so I don't want to talk about that so much, other than, I'll let you we'll talk about that a little bit so folks know. But how much room is there? I mean, if we take the last one that you did at 96%, there's how much worse can it get or better when you go through? So still some concern, I think, there in the long run. But how about you, Jared? In terms of the data collected, same question. Was there anything beyond the surprise of the increase in improvement, which is a good pat on the back for higher ed? That's great. It sets a good example for the rest of us, that are out there. Anything else that you just kind of saw, I wasn't expecting that, or that was a pleasant surprise?
Yeah, like Rob, that change, that improvement over time was, I don't know if that's surprising, but I was happy to see that,
Yeah.
right? Some notable changes. And as you said, I think it's reflective of higher ed and the environments and cultures that have been built there. Just when we look at the million homepages generally, we're not seeing those types of improvements. We've done it for 6 years now, and we're seeing very, very small improvements. This year, next week, we'll actually indicate an increase in the number of detected errors from the last couple of years. So maybe a bit of a reversal to that trend. So we're not seeing a lot of progress there. Just looking at just errors and some of those high-level numbers, we can get into some more depth of where I think there is optimism for the future. But one other aspect of the research is looking at indicators that aligned with better or worse accessibility. And some of those were institutions that had policies and clearly defined policies, indicating a commitment to accessibility, a measured commitment, some accountability. Those schools had better accessibility. Those that had been engaged in OCR complaints and lawsuits, also better accessibility. Interestingly, OCR complaints had much better accessibility than those that had been sued. Not actually a lot of improvement when there was a lawsuit, and we can probably surmise the motivations behind some of that change. But it's clear that the institutions that get accessibility, that define policies, that have these practices in place, are having, they're better. They're getting the results are better accessibility.
Yeah, I did think that your findings, where again, it wasn't surprising to me, but it was revealing, and it helps, again, the audience understand a little bit better about the dynamics, the carrot and the stick here, what's happening. And so the OCR filings and the lawsuits, unfortunately, those are the sticks that tend to motivate institutions, whether they're educational organizations or otherwise. Having not read everything, were there recommendations that came out of the research? I know there were, but what recommendations came out of the research that you were making to educational institutions as a result of your findings?
Yeah, primarily we were just looking to see what the current state was and how that differed, over 10 years. But a recommendation, based on those predictors, for me, I looked through the list of what are the best predictors of web accessibility in higher education, and of these, which ones are actionable. So, things like having an OCR resolution or getting sued, that's not something that we want to do to improve our website accessibility. So, but what can we do? The ones related to policy really stood out, that having a policy of any type was one of the top predictors, and the other was we looked at 8 specific characteristics of policies. So we did a policy analysis of every policy in the sample, and just yes, no, does it have this, does it have this, does it have this? Including enforcement mechanism was one of the things that we looked at, and there were actually a surprising number of policies that had an enforcement mechanism.
Can you expand on that? The enforcement mechanism, what did that consist of? How did that work?
The most extreme case, we had a slide showing in this morning's slide deck, but it was, as an employee of this institution, you could be penalized for having inaccessible content. And others were just they laid out the process by which sites needed to be reviewed and they could be brought down. You know, if we own the site as an institution, it's not accessible, and you follow this process, then we will bring that site down
Some
if
other
it
problems.
doesn't satisfy what's required. So that was one variable that we looked at in policies, but that was not one that showed up as having a positive influence on web accessibility. The one that did was having responsible parties identified within policies. And so, if there are specific positions that own this within the institution, then I think those individuals are going to take it seriously and take some action. So that to me is the biggest takeaway, that if we're still in the process of creating policies or implementing policies, having that piece, responsible parties, really seems to be a key piece of that.
So two big recommendations there: create policy if you don't have it. Look at the policy and analyze it to make sure that it's got the enforcement mechanisms in place, and that there's accountability, that someone owns, whatever notion of that policy belongs, quote unquote, in their space. So accountability, the policy, these are important things that if you're here representing an educational institution, you want to take note of. And it probably would be good to go back and look at what you actually do have. I mean, oftentimes policy gets created. I was looking at a procurement policy for another organization the other day, and they said, "Oh yeah, we have this and we have that." And I said, "Are you sure?" "Yeah." "Okay, well, I just read the whole policy and I don't see it. So show me where it's at." "Oh, I thought we talked about it." Okay, so talk is cheap. So I think that's a great notation. One thing that I thought that was interesting, and of course it is a result of time, was ARIA and its use back when this first study came out and how it's affected things today. So can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, Jared, I don't know if you can.
I can maybe share a little bit, and some things, as we think about the future, we do measure ARIA use in our Web a million. Really significant increases in ARIA implementation across pages, especially over the last several years. That also aligns with home pages getting a whole lot bigger. We're seeing a 10 to 15% increase in the number of page elements on a home page per year, about a 50% increase in the last 4 to 5 years. Home pages are just getting really, really big and complex, and just a lot more code to them, including ARIA as part of that. And so that's a little bit alarming, is how do we in accessibility keep up with that pace when things are just getting bigger. But if we break that down a little bit and look at the size of home pages compared to their popularity, the most popular pages are bigger. We actually see a kind of a linear decrease in the complexity of pages. The most popular pages have a whole lot more elements. Those closer to 1 million have a whole lot fewer elements. Same thing with ARIA. And so that but when we look at detected errors, the top, about half of our sample is actually a bit below average. And then we see kind of a spike towards the middle, and then a little bit of a decrease right towards the end of that million. So there's some interesting things. I don't know exactly what that means, but it does suggest to me that if those most popular pages are at least maintaining accessibility while growing significantly over the last several years, if we could start to control that size of those home pages and bring that down a little bit, thinking about usability and technical debt of developers, where more and more developers are just using frameworks and libraries and pulling all of this code in, a lot of which they don't control, which can really impact accessibility. It just feels like if we could rein that in and get a little better grasp on code control and the complexity of these pages, that accessibility really could start to accelerate in the future.
So the whole notion of, these kind of remind me of the old Hebrew scrolls, roll them out, and the Greek scrolls, and you get in there. That's the way a web page looks like right now, top to bottom. So ARIA helps with the regions and the sectioning of that. But what bothers me, and having done some studies with Clayton Lewis, with individuals with cognitive load and cognitive disabilities, it's the whole memorization and navigational aspect of going up and going down. How do I get back up? Where do I go? And things along those lines. Did does that seem to make sense in terms of some of the complexity that you're talking about and the user experience and usability of it?
I think at least anecdotally, I think it's pretty safe to say that as a page has more and more elements, that the cognitive load of that is going to be a lot higher. We don't have a lot of data that measures that, though, especially in the cognitive area, because so many of those are difficult to measure in an automated way across 1 million pages.
Yeah.
But yeah, the implications there for that audience are pretty significant.
It seems almost like they're stuffing as much as they possibly can into that homepage for their, I don't know what, I imagine that there is some, I'm sure there's some designers and UX folks here that could help me out personally. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. I mean, I don't understand why you would want to create something so lengthy in terms of a user experience when we already know that people tend to chunk information naturally anyway and just keep it like that. But it must have to do somewhat with the notion of 3 clicks in, and then after that you lose interest. So that keeps a person sticky on the front end of that. But it's something to think about. Okay, let's go back to the study itself. The very first thing you had listed on there was documentation language, and of course I understand that from the standpoint of WCAG and what good HTML requires. But why is that really important in terms of a website developed or delivered by educational institution? And Rob, feel free to jump in here because I feel like you're caught in the middle, and I'm not asking.
I'm a little bit. I've got like some bigger picture thoughts that we can hopefully get to a little bit as well. But in the meantime, I can defer to the study experts since they've been in the middle of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. Yeah.
Well, the practical reason why we were interested in that was because it was easy to measure, and so.
That makes sense.
But
Yeah.
but it is important, and we actually only looked at English language websites. There were some higher education institutions in the U.S. are not English language,
Yeah.
but we didn't have the capacity as researchers to do policy analysis in a language other than English, and so that was why we filtered in that way.
Yeah, and
but otherwise, it's important to identify because it is a multilingual world
Right.
with multilingual assistive technologies, and so they need to know what language this web page is in, and the way to do that is with a lang attribute, at a high level on the HTML tag or the body tag. Those are the things we were looking for.
Yeah, exactly. So that part of it I think is very interesting because we are reaching out to not just a broader audience in terms of various disabilities, but various languages. It's important to be inclusive at that level too.
Yeah, and as we look in our Web 8 Million, as we look at language, it is one of the most significant variables in detected accessibility. There are really significant differences across languages of those 1 million pages that we analyze, and kind of some regional trends, things like that. But some East Asian languages, for instance, significantly more errors detected on average. So some interesting data there when it comes to language.
Very, very interesting. So a focus at that point in priority may be that they're, because these are all U.S. educational institutions, is that right?
This was, yeah.
Yeah.
For our study.
Yeah, so maybe, we're just thinking about English being the first language and not really giving some substance in priority to international languages. Yeah, good point. Rob, go ahead. I want you to get into the conversation here, so let's hear some of yours.
I think when we have the conversation about policy and governance, there's a lot of talk in our space in particular about shifting accessibility left. So moving accessibility out of just QA and dev and into design. And I think that what the study does show is that we've got to shift left and up, right? Because the policy, the governance, those things don't happen without a commitment and a vision on behalf of leadership at a pretty high level, right? You're not going to have a policy authoring process. You're not going to put in place really effective governance and really try to engage accessibility more holistically without that leadership piece. And so I look at the technical, but I think that crossover into what are these non-technical indicators is so key. And I feel like in the accessibility space, we need to start thinking about how to message about that. And the shift left conversation is really vital to project work. But what I've seen is that it can be a struggle for one project team in an organization to do that and have it spread anywhere else. So those are the kinds of things that I take from this, is how do we then shift the conversation based on these sets of data and these observations to really try to help organizations to look at accessibility as not just a training, not just a any one thing sort of subject. How do we really broaden it and get it so that we are helping to kind of change the system that creates the products that we provide, right?
Yeah. So your institutions are leaders in our field of accessibility. So do you find yourself going out and heralding these findings? And I mean, are you kind of taking responsibility, so to speak, and get that message out? Because I think it's a great point, that Rob made. I know that the University of Washington and I know Utah State, you've got policy in place. I envision or imagine, can't say that I've gone in and looked, but I imagine that there is a notion of a maturity model, kind of dynamic, an approach to this, which is what we're speaking to, right? Because if you shift left up, we're saying here's where it needs to be. So that's the strategy for the organization. So how are you guys doing anything to kind of message that out to the rest of the higher ed world? And if you're not, we're going to get out the sticks.
I think that's a good message for everyone. We try to share the data and our findings and our experiences and what's working and what's not working for us. That's our pretty limited experience, and we need more research, better research. We need more people sharing. We need more people talking about their models, talking to their peer organizations, their companies, their industry experts, things like that about this, and especially at these higher levels, right, left and up, so that they can really get a vision for this. They can see that it's possible to really move the needle a little bit.
And we're far from being perfect at the University of Washington. I think we've got something to contribute to the conversation, but lots of other institutions do as well. And I think we all probably are in the same space in that our central web teams get it. I think that generally that is more true than false in higher education. That those who are developing the main web sites and brand themes and all that for an institution are educated on accessibility, are aware of accessibility, and are trying to implement accessibility. Mm-hmm. And so we've got a big distinction, though, between things we build and things we buy. And when we are reliant on third-party applications, then often there are no good choices.
Right.
We've got a particular need that needs to be met. There are 3 products in that space. They all are inaccessible. And so that's a big challenge in terms of the future of the web. How do we get over that? It's a question I don't have, a concrete answer for. Yeah. But I think that's something that we really need to, strategize and figure out. And I know there's here at CSUN there's a lot of corporate attendees, which is awesome. In the people space, I am optimistic because there are so many people who are now doing accessibility work, even in a corporate setting. But that tends to be major companies, I think. A lot of the products we're purchasing in higher education are small niche products where they don't have any knowledge of accessibility and they don't have any intent to invest in accessibility because they don't have much competition.
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. The whole notion of procurement. This is why we've got the Procure Access initiative going on in Disability In. So I'm really feeling good about where that's going. But it's going to take a lot of work to get to that point. It's a great point. I can't believe how fast time's going by. I just checked the time. We've got about 10 minutes. Jared, we talked earlier about AI and automation. So how did that figure in? What's your feelings on that from the study?
Well, there's been a lot of conversation here about AI, and we chatted before this. There was a kind of a hot button thing that was released a couple of weeks ago. Jacob Nielsen, if you didn't read it, published and basically said, web accessibility has failed and AI is the solution. And kind of trying to look beyond a lot of the ableist messaging and tone of a lot of what was conveyed there. It caused me some real pause and contemplation. Like, has web accessibility failed? We looked at a lot of the numbers just at face value, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of progress. But what if Jacob Nielsen had said this 10 years ago, and everyone listened to him? Yep. Think about what the web would be like if there weren't you, right? Those of us that are passionate about this and fighting for it. Measurably, it's hard to see progress, but we're comparing that with ourselves, right? Where we're at right now, and where would web accessibility be if it weren't for great people working hard, being passionate about it? But to your question, AI, there's a lot of prospect there, a lot of promise, a lot of dangers, I think, with it. The accessibility community has been burned a lot of times with innovation, right? I always feel like we're lagging. We're trying to catch up. We're in remediation mode on so many of these, and I think with AI, there's a lot of potential to really bring these communities together and harmonize in a lot of ways, and hear the voices of those with disabilities and advocates to really ensure that AI is and these technologies are disability aware and focusing on these things. Not only on the end user side, where I think there's a lot of potential, but for those that are building new technologies and implementing AI into those, I'm excited about the potential for it. I think the future's really exciting there.
Yeah. It reminds me of something my grandparents used to say, catching a tiger by the tail. You got this thing that's just running out there. It's big and it's running, and that tends to just, you've got technology running ahead of us. But frankly, that's been the truth for our community and our profession for as long as I've been in it. 40 years, and we're always behind. Or Dan Goldstein, making that very point a few years ago here as part of his keynote. Was it here or was it in San Diego? I think it was actually in San Diego. And he made that point. We continue to fall behind. So we've got to track these emerging technologies, whether it's XR, AI, automation. We have to track them. We have to work with them. It's easy to fight them, but the better thing is, how do we work more collaboratively? And I think the research that your institutions are doing help those organizations that are kind of at the cutting edge of those emerging technologies. So thank you very much for the work that you've done. Jared, can we talk just a little bit about the survey that's coming out, the Screen Reader survey, and also the Web Million?
Yeah, so the Web A Million will have new results next week. We're excited for that. Slow progress, looking at some of the high numbers, but there are a lot of areas that are exciting there. We released the results of our most recent Screen Reader user survey a few weeks ago. Rob, maybe you can speak to some of that. I think looking at the future, one of the biggest questions there is, we asked about sentiment, about the accessibility of the web and how they feel like things are going. Rob, do you want to speak to that maybe?
Yeah, there's an increase in optimism, right? Just to sum it up pretty briefly, it seems that the participants in the survey are recognizing that there is improvement. And so we have the Million data that may indicate that it's not as quick as it seems, but we've seen that trend line go up a little bit with the conversation with actual human beings who are using screen readers, right? So I think there's reason to be encouraged there for sure. And I think thinking about the future and the research, so I joined WebAIM 2 years ago, just a little bit over, and I do think that work will continue to inform our space, and hopefully, it'll be broadcast more into the non-accessibility community, right? Because it's so insightful, and I think it really helps to bring home points beyond reasons for optimism, things like, how many people use a screen reader but can see the screen, and for those of us in this room, that's not a counterintuitive thing. I think for your average developer working in corporate somewhere, if they know a screen reader exists at all, they think that it's only used by people that can't see at all. So I'm hopeful that some of the data that we pull out from the million and from the survey will begin to spread around a little bit. And I know, again, in our space, people ask, I think every third question I've gotten is about the million, probably. And that's great, and we want that, but we want to see that amplified out to try to share that data with more people who are coming into the tech space or who are just more generally looking at technology outside of our echo chamber here.
Yeah.
And there are some things where that can affect change. A good example of this is the React framework. When we did a million analysis, one of our first ones, React, aligned with significant increases in number of detectable errors. And Joe Devin and some others went to Facebook and said, hey, is this the image that you want, to be aligned with decreased accessibility? And so they went to town. They fixed some of their code base. They improved their documentation. So they were including code that modeled accessibility.
Right.
They did additional testing, and they started to message this within their community. And we saw over the course of just a couple of years, now that the React framework aligns with increases in accessibility, better accessibility. And I think that's just the type of model that when we have that data, and we have people that are passionate about it and help educate, that we can really affect that change over time.
Awesome. Yeah, good points. Terrell, are we going to wait another 10 years for the next study, or?
Well, 2 of my co-authors retired last month.
Oh,
So
so it's worse than I thought.
We wore
but if
them out.
anybody else wants to take the time,
But there's so much value in that study. Are you planning on, so you're here at CSUN, are you planning on, taking this on the road and talking about it in other engagements? Maybe some of the audience will be going to other conferences. Web for All is coming up in a few months, so that might be something. Maybe, not that I'm trying to give you any ideas. I mean, Singapore is nice. It's just wherever you want to go. Maybe something for GAD. I mean, I'm just throwing a couple things out there.
No, I would just say that, all of this research came from having conversations, right, about accessibility and asking questions, for us saying like, what are screen reader users really doing? We'd say things, screen reader users prefer this, they do this, they use this, or the web has these types of issues, but we didn't know for sure in conversations like out here in the foyer, and prompted us to do this type of research. Some conversations with Terrell, allowed us to collect the data that we've got. So there are lots of ideas, I think, in this room that we can start to have those conversations and put it into action. And if our organizations can help some of that happen, we'd be happy to have those conversations.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, I just checked my time right now. We only got down to our last 2 minutes, so I think we covered a lot of the highlights. Anything you want to add?
I just want to add, related to the AI conversation, that seems to be, the theme here. Lots of sessions on AI, a lot of conversation about it, and I do definitely have a lot of hope, because when we get to the content author side of things, it's one thing to influence designers, developers, people that are building frameworks, component libraries and so forth. If we can get all that stuff to be accessible, the web as a whole will be more accessible. But we've got millions, maybe billions of content authors, and we're never going to educate them all. And what do we do with all that content that is not accessible? I see a really critical AI piece being on the user agent side. So assistive technologies using AI to better be able to handle whatever is placed in front of them. So, it doesn't depend on something being coded properly or that content author being knowledgeable about how to produce an accessible document. The AI, the user agent, the assistive technology can handle that.
Yeah.
So that's, I think we need to be working toward that, but not expect that this is an easy button and we don't need to do any more work. It's just part of the conversation, part of the equation.
Yeah, exactly. Great point. Again, it's technology. Technology, generally speaking, especially emerging technology, has some notion of maturation. And, it's experimental at first, and that's why we put them, into, our back labs to get started, then we move forward from there. So, but it's important for all of us here to be aware of the pluses and the minuses and the things and the guidance that we need to keep in mind as we move forward and try to improve this technology and make it work for our field and our users. So thank you, Terrell. That's a great point. So Jared Smith, Rob Carr from Utah State and WebAIM, Terrell Thompson. Let's give them a good applause for a nice session. So this is Mike Paciello with CSUN ATC TV. We want to thank you all for attending today. The next session was canceled, just in case you didn't get that on your schedule. So we'll come back here at 4:20 and do a wrap-up of today's sessions. Thank you very much.